my name is Julie Roy, and I'm a math teacher in grade 5, and I teach in French immersion. This is the third video in the series of multiplying. Once you know your basic multiplication facts, how do you get to multiply larger numbers with a model that will follow you through your entire schooling career. So today we're going to look at how you multiply a 3-digit number by a 1-digit number, building on the skills that you already know. In order to do this, you'd want to check that students can multiply a single-digit number with a multiple of 100. Okay, so that's like the transitioning step. If they can't do this or they get confused when they do this, you'd want to reinforce just multiplying 1-digit number by a 3-digit number that's multiple again of 100. And so when students do this, you would want them to think, well, I have 3 times 300, that must make 900. Okay? Again, your place value. If I had a number like 5 times 700, here what I would want students to think again is 5 times 700, and that is 3,500. Right? And 3,500s, when we write that as a number, would be 3,500, 3,500. Again, very important to focus on not adding the 2 zeros from the number, but rather focus on understanding. I can't emphasize this enough, how important it is for students to understand what 3,500 is, what it looks like, to talk about it with words. At this particular point, I would actually give students problems where I would just write it in words to avoid the actual zeros, so that in their minds they're not thinking about adding zeros, but more so in the problem. So 5 times 700, I would spell it out this one as in what's the answer is 3,500. Can you write that as a number? So I would trick them to not use the zeros so they wouldn't rely on adding on these 2 zeros. Okay? So you want to make sure kids can do that well-versed with a lot of success and do that mentally. They shouldn't need any form of paper or thinking. They should just be able to look at this, say 3 times 300, that's 900. 5 times 700, that's 3,500. They should just bang know the answer because they know their basic facts with efficiency. So once they can do those numbers really effectively, you can start by looking at 3-digit numbers that have 3 different digits in them. An example would be 367 times 4, for example. And again, you would want to go back to your what is a multiplication problem? Well, multiplication is always trying to find the area of a rectangle. And in this case, the rectangle has one side that measures 4 and one side that measures 367. Well, how could you break 367 down in parts that you can tackle? Remember, you already checked that students can do 4 times 300. That was in your first part. Now you'd want to break it down into 3 parts that are manageable. So 367, break it down as 300, 60, and 7. Some students may ask, well, why can't I do 67? Well, can you do 4 times 67 very efficiently? Probably not. This becomes a 3-part problem, and in these 3-part problems, very few students can tackle 3 parts mentally. So here, when they do a 3-digit number with a 1-digit number that has all 3 different digits, I would not ask them to do this mentally. I would let them use the paper to show their work. Okay? And so again, the same thinking happens. What's the area of this box that has one side of 4, one side of 300? That would be 1,200. So I get them to write 1,200. 4 times 60, what is that? And again, really focus on the 60, right? Because some kids will look at 4 times 6 and just write 24. It's not 24, it's 24 tens. And 24 tens is 240. So only when they look at 60 as 60 and not as 6 will they get this. Very important to base it on your model with the appropriate numbers and the appropriate vocabulary for these numbers. And then 4 times 7 is your 28. Now again, before kids are able to multiply, you really require them to be strong additively. They shouldn't need to write these things on a piece of paper to add them. You should always be able to add 3 numbers together mentally. And how you would do that is just add the first 2 numbers and look for if there's any number patterns happening. But usually the way when you use this model, the first 2 boxes will go together because there will be hundreds on both these boxes and no hundreds on the last box, right? So to look at this, thinking, I'm going to have 1,200. I add 2 extra 100. That's 1,400. I have 40, 60, 68. So 1,468. Students should not need to write down all of these parts and add them on the side. If they need to do this, then they need to work on their addition. And those will be in the first series where I talk about how to teach students to add mentally. Okay? So this sums up how you would teach multiplication of a 3-digit number with a 1-digit number, making sure you go back to see if students can multiply a 1-digit by a multiple of 100 and then just breaking it down into its parts. Thank you and have a great day.